driving, but also through in your regular meditation, in better understanding your negative thoughts, your negative feelings, the impulses and the urges, and the underlying unconscious motives that trigger these conscious, automatic negative thoughts and so forth, how much better you'll be able to process. Just now, when we have an anxious patient, we literally have to kind of give them a thought record and just for a week, just help them identify their negative automatic thought before we even link it with a negative feeling or so forth. But if you learn this ability to parallelly process information with selective and distributed attention, that kind of that can be a big advantage, where you can be aware primarily of the trigger that activates your anxiety or your fear, but at the same time concurrently be aware of the related anxious thoughts, feelings, and impulses or urges that go with it in a contextual way. You can be aware of it all together at the same time, and thus say very valuable information. If you look at a lot of the anxiety kind of evidence-based protocols for treating anxiety, you'll find a large segment is devoted to identifying and addressing each of these four components in a sequential way. First, they will teach you how to identify physiological distresses or tensions as evoked by or produced, triggered by anxiety. Then they'll teach you how to next identify the negative automatic thought, and then the feeling and the behavior and so forth. So that can often take like a couple of weeks just to do that. If you learn this technique, you can, just from a temporal or time point of view, there's so much to be gained. But from a Buddhist point of view, it helps you to process information much like when you're driving a car. It's spontaneous, and that sense of freedom that's created not only generates increasing sense of internal stability and resilience, but an internal sense of confidence, which is very critical in, as you know, in anxiety treatment later after you treat the threatening, after you help the patient initially, probably over half of the treatment span, the first half is spent in helping patient manage the anxiety. Second half is really to gradually, among many other things, to treat in things like to develop confidence, because confidence, as you know, is critical in taking risk, and risk is very important in the successful overall treatment of anxiety. Okay, so hence classical mindfulness is, as you can see, is quite substantially different from the modified, more simpler presentations of mindfulness, which are in no way to be discounted, particularly in the sense that they have been developed in forms that are easily accessible for people interested and new to the concept of practice of mindfulness. But once you've understood things like mindfulness-based stress reduction, then you want to go a little further, and classical mindfulness is a step, and to do so, and well supported by, independently. If you look at the components of classical mindfulness, which are sustained attention, distributed attention, the use use of working memory, the use of executive functioning, and then metacognition, and then finally, or when you effectively use this, it leads to vipassana, which is called insight. You then get experiential insight into whatever you are subjecting to sustained attention. Sustained attention allows you to know that particular selective object thoroughly so well that then you can free up the attention to know its contextual parameters. Everything, if you really look, nothing can be known by itself, in other words. It's within a context. If you want to know, kind of really if you're an artist, you want to kind of really capture a vivid image of this cup with its contents, you have a better chance of doing so if you capture the contextual information at the same time, how it's located in time and space in relationship to this table and the background. A person who tries to capture this cup as an artist just by looking at it and inhibiting awareness of everything around it will have a much more difficult time capturing this image. Later, if you ask him to draw it, he will have more difficult time. Artist who is able to look at it in the context of, in its environmental context, and then focus selectively on the object will capture it much more accurately. Actually, you can try that out yourself with anything, you know. So in reality, nothing can be known without its context. So that's something even kind of science basically supports, and that's something that kind of, at least from an experiential point of view, people who've been meditating were aware of it. Okay. Unfortunately, as we from childhood we've been trained to move away. When a baby is born, they have more distributed attention, right? They cannot focus their eyes on any particular object, and we as parents start training them to kind of gradually give up their distributed attention and learn to develop selective attention. And then we teach them the ABC, all of which are like sequential and selective, and that goes on from school to university and so forth, and we lose much of the capacity of parallel processing. Mindfulness, classical mindfulness, is a way to regain that process, a process that is substantially, if you study Western cognitive science and neuroscience in terms of sustained attention and distributed attention, they say exactly the same thing. They say it's so important to kind of use sustained attention in order to master the object so that you can free up. It's virtually identical. So hence, quite surprisingly, the support for introducing classical mindfulness comes directly more from, of course, independently and separately comes from the cognitive and neuroscience data. Okay. By the way, sustained attention is still very new in Western cognitive sciences. So it's still, though it's studied more, it was never studied actually. It was only during the Second World War when the navigators from the radar navigators, began to make errors, and they couldn't maintain sustained attention, and they were making a lot of errors with huge consequences. The army began to say, okay, why can't they sustain attention? Why are they missing so many targets or missing seeing enemy aircrafts? Okay, and then they began to start sustain attention. Consequently, the field of sustained attention in the Western tradition. I mention this because it's of great interest, I think, historically for us to know how it evolved. There wasn't much interest prior to that. So it's a very recent development, but the consequence of that trigger that originated the study is it's led to studying sustained attention as a performance task. How quickly can I spot the dot on the computer within with a lot of distracting, similar looking like dots. So it's purely a visual performance task, which is very different, on the other hand, from the Buddhist classical mindfulness, where it's not a performance-based task. Though it's in both cases they are learning activities. In the Buddhist tradition, it's more to know an object really well. It's for knowing an object so well. In one case, they are using sustained attention to really perform an activity of, like, if you are if you are an inspector of, if you're a security guard of an important military installation, or if you're a security person checking luggages, the whole idea of sustained attention is within a short period of time, when objects are moving so fast, you must be able to sustain your attention, because a slight lapse in your attention may mean that a gun might pass through through security, as obviously that's probably one of the main reasons why journalists and others who test the system get away with it, is because there's this human lapse. Why? Because a lot of people believe that generally average person cannot sustain attention on a single object for more than a couple of seconds. For many, if you are switching from one object to other, like in performance tasks, then you can sustain attention for 15 minutes, 5 to 15 minutes, most average people. But if I ask you to just look at one particular object, average is few seconds. So the meditators are claiming that they can stay on a single object, and that's another big difference between the Western cognitive sciences on sustained attention. In the Western system, you are watching many objects, so you are switching really attention from one to the other, but in a sustained period of time. So you can do that for 15, 20 minutes easily. Most people can. But after that, they found that an average healthy person will begin to miss. They will become mindless or distracted, and they will miss the targets. But one single object which the Buddhists are kind of focusing on is extraordinarily demanding. Okay, so classical mindfulness can be more demanding intellectually. Like anything that is more rewarding, obviously requires is more demanding. Consequently, we've allocated out of the 8 weeks of training, 2 weeks to solidly master reflexive abdominal breathing. Once you master that, your attention no longer has to be worry about, like, am I breathing smoothly and comfortably, even movements of the abdomen or not. You don't have to allocate attention or awareness to that. And that attention can now, the freed up attention can now be allocated towards following continuously the movement of the rising and the falling of the abdomen. Okay, so that's basically where you're going to learn how to place your mind first on the movement of the sensation of the movement of the abdomen as it moves up and as it moves down, but do it continuously. So initially it'll be like for two continuous cycles. A cycle is an inhalation and an exhalation, but then your goal is to increase it to 4. And if you can increase it to about 20, then you will learn how to